I need support staff to clear the room. Stand up and walk now.
Hello and welcome to The Watch. My name is Chris Ryan. I am an editor at TheRinger.com, and joining me on the other line, it's his house. He'll smoke if he wants to. It's Andy Greenwald.
That's literally you.
Yeah.
First of all, I think that this is a very incredible episode of Task and a serious one. And we need to treat it with the seriousness that it deserves.
Yes.
But I must say at the outset that Grasso's house did in some way remind me of the apartment that you and your not yet wife shared in Brooklyn, in which the constant factor, whether it was summer or the dead of winter at your beautiful Christmas party, is the cracked kitchen window.
Oh, yeah. Smoking
around
out the
which
window.
Everyone smoked.
Yes.
There were rules and they were respected.
Andy, we are going to talk about episode 6 of Task, which was huge, which was momentous, which had a lot of stuff going on. So if you, for some reason, are tuning into The Watch and have not watched Task yet, stop what you're doing, go watch Task, and then you can come back and check us out. I want to get right into it, man. I have no banter. I have no amusing anecdotes. My amusing anecdote is this is one of my favorite shows of the year.
Yep.
This was, I think, the best episode of this series so far. It's called Out Beyond Ideas of Wrongdoing and Right Doing, There is a River.
Is that a Songs Ohio song? Like what is that?
You'd think it's actually a line from a poem by the 13th century Persian poet Rumi.
That's so weird. That was my second guess.
Yeah.
What are the odds?
This one was written by Brad Inglesby and it was directed by Sally Richardson Whitfield, who also appears as the prosecutor when Maeve is being interrogated by Tom midway through the episode.
Shout out to Sally. Excellent
Shout out
work
to
on
Sally.
both sides
She's
of the
wearing
camera.
2 hats in this episode. And it continues right where episode 5 left off with the standoff in the woods. And, one of the more unrelenting, breathless 15-minute sequences that I've seen on TV in a long time. Or at least since the standalone episode of Adolescence in the interrogation room, but just an incredible 15 minutes of a standoff in the woods.
I believe the title card appears at the 18-minute mark.
So sick. Yeah.
That is such a sick move.
And
devastating.
If you're doing the Sports Center version of it, Kathleen McGinty gets shot in the shoulder. Robbie is fatally stabbed by Jason. Lizzie is run over by an escaping Jason and Perry in a truck. And she dies in Grasso's arms despite him betraying the task force and everyone else. Moments that like this show has been building towards, and it really, really delivers. Last episode was, the Heat diner scene essentially with Robbie and Tom in the car heading out towards this spot where Robbie had grown up and spent time with Billy as a kid on the Lehigh or in Lehigh. I don't even know. Honestly,
it's
the use of
Bushkill.
lakes and rivers, I'm getting a little confused, but it is Bushkill. I've honestly never been to Bushkill. But this was the kind of action set piece that this show hadn't really touched on since, Tom and Ray wrestling in a basement kind of. I mean, we've done a lot of talking and then we had some serious action. I kind of complained a little bit about, I think people have expected ending the episode with a bang, and they start the episode with a bang. So much to go over here, man. We want to just do general thoughts and impressions first?
Yeah, I mean, I do want to talk about, obviously, the consequential moments of the episode, and in terms of the plot, in terms of the surprises, in terms of the masterful orchestra conducting that Brad Inglesby does here regarding when, how, and where he deploys certain events.
Certain things that are inevitable but feel surprising because of where they're placed, maybe.
Surprising, but the flip side of inevitable is that dangerous word earned. Mm-hmm. And it also helps clarify what show we've been watching in a way that I found very significant. It's glib to say that Task is Philly Heat. I think there were clearly it's not just that, but I think to use the previous episode's car ride with Tom and Robbie as the comparison point to the diner scene. Like the diner scene is a lot of it's Michael Mann men, right? Like they're kind of like eyeing each other up and they're gauging each other, and it's kind of like a dick measuring contest in the best way with those actors. This is about two broken men like connecting over their shared humanity, which is a little bit more my speed. But then again, I haven't been to a diner in a minute. So the fact that this show isn't about necessarily the mano-a-mano collision between these two guys, it's about the spiderweb cracked tendrils of violence and community and loss and regret and guilt, is really meaningful to me in watching it, and also feels exactly where the show should be and what the show should be. And the thing that I wrote down after watching most of it was, and this is my top-down 100,000-foot statement that I kind of want to get your perspective on, is that I just think there's something both beautiful and really, really healthy at this moment about a TV show that doesn't look away from the consequences of terrible things.
Yeah.
We are desensitized to so much because of the scroll, because of the nature of what's popular, what's grabby. And this is a show that gives us and earns, again, that tricky word, Robbie's would-be father-daughter dance with Harper, and shows Harper sobbing because her father has, as we learn at the end of the episode, essentially sacrificed himself for her future.
Yeah.
Grasso is a full human who has done something unforgivable and has now, in the last episode, with the last episode ahead of us, has evolved into the show's villain in a very strong way. Even Jason, who is unequivocally the show's villain, who has murdered both Prendergast brothers with his bare hands, basically.
He's still a wife guy.
He's still a wife guy. Big picture, and maybe this is also like international picture, like I just found at this moment in history and in also my travel schedule, I found the just like unshakable humanity of this show, both affecting, but also like a restorative.
Yeah, I wonder whether or not some of it is just the uncommon settings of some of these real breakthrough moments. I mean, I think I went into this series and I was like, oh, this is going to be the urban crime drama that Philadelphia has never really truly gotten. Like, it's going to I don't know if I thought there was going to be a shootout on Broad Street or a chase through the Italian market.
There almost was after Sean Payton's behavior on Sunday.
Sure. But this show largely takes place in the natural world, and many of the insert shots, many of the cutaways are to birds and water and trees, and the connection that these characters have to these places being places of peace for them. In the previous episode, Ruffalo talked a lot.
They have places of peace, right? Like even that is so fragile.
Yeah, and the idea that like Ruffalo is trying to relate to Robbie by describing the patterns of behavior of a bird that shouldn't be where it is, but could still find its way home, or the way that Robbie releases Tom by sending him to a beautiful place that he has to get through by walking for a mile in the woods. And let me just say, as someone who's not much of a hiker, that's not an easy walk, like a mile in the woods.
It's more the woods part than the mile, I think. But yeah.
In any case, there's just, this is also the setting, obviously, for this incredibly violent exchange between the bikers, Robbie, and the task force. But it's really striking how much of this show has decided to take place in an incredibly idyllic setting, and what it's trying to do with that. I thought that a lot of the repeated imagery, Robbie jumping into the quarry, of birds flying, of whatever, like obviously get brought back up in his last few seconds of life in a way that I thought was quite beautiful and quite earned. Like that can often be the like, yes, I'm touching wheat as I walk into, Valhalla. But this felt very much like they did the work to get to that moment of release. And even more so, the fact that Robbie had been basically like asking Tom, what happens when you die? Like, what do you see? What do people seem to behave like? Because he fucking knows in the backseat of that car, he might as well have basketballs in that duffel bag. He is not bringing drugs. He does not expect to get out of this thing alive. He knows that he's signing up for that's his plan. So his interest in how do people feel when they die? What do you do when people die? Like, that's real because he knows that's what's about to happen.
I also think it's significant that his dream of escape, a dream that you, I think, really smartly pointed out is just punctured like a balloon instantly by a 21-year-old when he says it out loud to her. The dream of going to Canada, like an unspoiled green wilderness. It really made me reconsider all of that, because he lives in an abundant, green, beautiful wilderness, or he grew up in one. So it's really about returning to the innocent self. It's about returning to a time of before sin, basically.
Yes.
And that place doesn't really exist. It's in brochures, or it's in the Bible, maybe. You know, I find like when people, I have seen like online some people casually dismissing the show, not that they don't like it, but that it's just like a HBO classed up version of a more typical procedural. And I just think that that's to be, you know, with all due respect, I think that's really missing the point.
Yes.
I think that this show is a very, very thoughtful and at times beautiful and profound meditation on life and loss. And it supports and allows this kind of like the kind of stuff that we used to like to do in college English classes. Oh, well, this imagery is significant because it represents a prelapsarian time when blah, like all that bullshit that we don't do anymore because we don't even write. We just talk on podcasts. But it does feel like we could go back to some of that. I mean, you're reading spirituality books, you know,
because of this though.
Yeah,
the fucking episode is named after a line from a Rumi poem. Come on.
Tom talks about this bird, and then a bird distracts Robbie. Is that earthly business, or is that inevitable, like the way of the natural world goes? I don't know, but I think it's worth talking about because we've been praising Brad's architecture skills throughout the whole season, and so I feel like it's worth diving into just exactly what he did here. Because in addition to playing, you know, I've been saying this for years, and I'm not the only one saying it, playing one of the most effective and still underutilized cards in the show running deck, which is show your hand early or kill someone before you think it's time, or, you know, time is really the thing that is still most potent, I think, for showrunners in terms of breaking through to a jaded audience. In addition to doing all of that, and you know, along with Sally and the crew, like designing this incredible action sequence, he also rope-a-doped us because everything was so full on. I can't be the only one who didn't really think about Shelley. I didn't think about that business.
The only reason I thought about it really more than once is that Mickey Sumner is very good, and why would you have her do 1.5 scenes? You know,
she's there for one. She has one line, but the fact that everything about I found, you know, a minute ago, I'm talking about how beautiful and profound and how moved I was by how like bleak and sad the show sometimes is. No moment maybe more so than when Robbie has his revenge and then he too gets killed by the same monster that ruined his life.
Yeah.
Only to find out, as you were alluding to, that this entire thing was a suicide play, and that the money was already secured, and it was about keeping his family clean.
Maybe he hoped to get out of those woods. I don't think he seemed surprised by the amount of motorcycle guys who showed up. I do think he was surprised that the task force found him. And I do think he was hindered by the fact that Grasso was doing Chip Kelly hand signals all over the place to get guys to like, do this, don't do that, do not take a shot at Lizzie.
Talk about traitors to Philadelphia.
Yeah, you know what? There's something about how a lot of what happens in this episode feels inevitable. Like I did not assume Robbie was going to get out of this series alive. And I didn't think everybody from the task force was going to live. I don't think I foresaw it being as not random, but seemingly arbitrary in terms of its circumstances, the way that Lizzie died. But the connection that she and Grasso, I think, sincerely had, I don't think that was part of the assignment. I think all he had to do was just be like, they're coming for you here. Like he obviously opens himself up to her. The arbitrary nature of the way that she dies in a car crash rather than in a shootout,
well,
you know,
I mean, not crash, but she's run over.
She is run over. And she can't. And the reason she gets run over is because she can't hear the truck coming because Grasso has fired off a gun right by her head. So she's lost her eardrum. I figured Aaliyah or Lizzie would probably die out there, or McGinty. But this show isn't about those kinds of moments. It's about the moments afterwards. And that's what you're hitting at. The reconciling and dealing with violence. The set piece works better because we are now going to spend an hour and a half thinking about and talking about what happened. And there may be some shootout in the finale, and it may be Jason versus Perry versus Grasso versus Tom versus Aaliyah. But I think that it's so much more effective to think about it in terms of like these characters' lives go on even if the series ends, you know? And even when Maeve gets that money at the end, which would be the end of 90% of versions of this show, is Maeve gets a huge bag of money, and I think Maeve's in trouble, man.
Maeve she's
has
21 years old, raising these
drug
kids.
Money now, and a lot of people are watching it or looking for it, and it was so important to Jason that Jason was like still out there eating Perry trout. You know, trout a la Perry.
Do you think? Well, I have two quick side questions for you, digressive questions for you. One, are you excited for the day in 20 years when Brad Inglesby announces that he's making Task 2 with Leonardo DiCaprio in the Maeve part about what happens to the money? I feel like that's just let's just book it in advance. Get your tickets in VistaVision. The second question is, I did wonder, like sometimes, you know, often around where I am right now in the beautiful city of London, you and I will like indulge little fantasies of like, oh, what if just two chums shared a flat for a time and, you know, split the G together on occasion or whatever. Do you think we could have hung in a Perry and Jason type way? Like, I feel like that would be a recipe for the end of a 29-year friendship.
If I was just you just keep getting on your phone. Why are you doing that?
I'm trying to make you dinner. Show some respect.
Yeah.
Just some wet fish straight from the river.
That's not where I saw this show going. I didn't see this show going in like a weird, like all of these people are trapped with their own decisions now. Grasso is...
There are writers, I'm sure in any medium, but let's talk specifically about television. There are writers who are obsessed with plot, and there are writers who are obsessed with aesthetics, and there are writers who are obsessed with style, and there are writers who are obsessed with surprises. And those are all valid, and there are examples in each category of shows that I love. What's clear about Brad Inglesby is he's obsessed with life. He can't stop drinking from the cup of life, like in some sort of dramatic religious analogy that I can't quite pull off here. Everyone is given a full life. Everyone exists in always, all at once. Like you were saying, Jason is a wife guy, but like everyone is the totality of their experience. Tom and Robbie didn't need to get along, but they did, and their behavior afterwards reflected that. You know, Grasso absolutely really cared about Lizzie, but he also is a flawed and failed person who is trying to have everything all at once and make it work out, which doesn't seem to ever work out for anyone at any point in the show. You said that, and you're right, that like the Lizzie death felt sort of random, but
I'm not really
I have
ready
to say
to talk about it yet.
Well, I'm going to check in. I just wanted to say that I was more prepared maybe than you were, because early in the episode, like super early, Grasso says, "Lizzie, stick with me." And I was like, shit, that's the McBain moment right there. That's a wrap on her. So talk me through your feelings.
Well, I thought it was a great character, and I think it speaks to a larger conversation that probably people are going to have after this episode of like, why were these people put on a task force in the first place? You know, because with the exception of Aaliyah, they seem to have some questions about their
some red flags
preparedness. Yeah. Aaliyah, obviously, like all about her business, has this sharpshooting background. Seems like she's a pretty good detective investigator.
She got her badge and her nickname.
Yeah. But Lizzie has a bad reputation among her fellow state troopers as being a little bit of a nervous Nelly when it comes to when shit goes down. And Grasso has something in his file that is known to possibly tip off dark hearts, FYI.
Well, there's two strands of thought there, right? One is being asked to join a task force is not nearly as special as you and I may have thought it was.
Sure.
That everyone's always getting pulled into task forces. It's like being a sophomore in college and someone saying, want to join my band.
Right.
Like everybody does everybody picks up a bass once in a while. At
Who
least
among
once,
us
right?
did not play psychedelic country for 2 great weeks, you know?
2 of the best weeks of your life. The other alternative, and this is something that I'm legitimately asking you because I haven't read anything about this episode yet, and I also am in the dark, and I don't know if that's good or bad, is McGinty still sus? Because we felt that way, and then she seemed to be cleared a little bit by the Grasso stuff, but doesn't her still being a little bit compromised cover for the motley makeup of the task force? I feel like
possibly. I mean, I think that I'm open to anything happening. I would say that the difference between Task and Mare is found in this kind of construction where Task is a crime show, and a lot of what is happening is evident to viewers if it's not evident to the characters. So the viewers know that Grasso is the mole before Tom does. I think the viewers know Cliff is dead before Robbie does. You know, like
we see it.
It's a totality of like this sort of these dozen characters and what they're going through and what they're doing and what they're thinking. We know that Aaron's dead before Jason does.
Still
we know
doesn't
who
know.
killed Aaron, and Jason does not. Mare was more of a
You're
detective
talking
show.
about Mayor of Easttown, Brad's first show.
Mayor of Easttown was more about this woman looking for the killer of a young girl. And as things were revealed, they usually happened in the order that Mare herself was finding them. The viewer and Mare were on the same page. So I think that there's elements of it that may make you second guess. And one thing that Inglesby is doing in this show that I think is successful sometimes, and every once in a while I bump against, is someone is about to find out a very important piece of information, but the show is going to cut away from that.
Well, yeah, but that's TV 101.
Sure.
I get it. I
Sure.
hear you. I mean, I think it's for me, stuff like that is baked into the concept when you make a detective or a crime show, and it's just a question of how artfully you hide it. And, you know, look, there's a character on the show who's a magician, and so maybe there's some projection there. That's how Brad sees himself. You know,
Sure.
Please come to my show. One thing I wanted.
My point
please, you
was
finish.
really more that like the way that he is making it and the way that we are being given this information, sometimes before the characters, is that it creates more of a sense of inevitability and tragedy about it. Because you're like, I know, hey man, Robbie, like this is about to be the most popular woods in America. Like, you please don't go here. But he's got a destiny. You know, he's got something he's moving towards. And I think, you know, the idea that the show is going to be about Tom finding Robbie, and instead it's almost going to be Tom finding peace for Robbie.
Yes.
Is pretty amazing.
Yes. I think one quick thing and one longer thing. The quick thing is just, there was a really artful reprise of the Crazy Robbie thing. Crazy Robbie always trying to find a way to, to save his life, to change his life. I wrote it down. I just can't find it in my notes. This people are who they are,
which
right?
is what
This
Perry
sort of,
referred to him as in episode 5.
And you're like, wait, what?
Yeah.
And then that's how people see him, because we're introduced to him as someone who is quirky and interesting and maybe biting off a little bit more than he can chew, but the nature of television is we're right there with him. So we just kind of trust him. Oh, Cliff likes him. We like him too. That added an air of tragedy and inevitability to his arc for sure. Realizing that everyone was kind of like, this guy's just going to keep trying, and we don't think he's ever going to get there. This subtle reveal that the show actually isn't a two-hander.
Mm-hmm.
It's the Tom show. Was, I think, kind of beautiful and felt surprising in a way. And I don't say that to diminish Tom Pelfrey's performance, because it's one of the best performances of the year. And I think Emmy voters are going to agree with me on that.
Yeah, all they have to do is watch his scene with Margarita Leveva when he finds out Cliff's dead.
This is such a sneaky good Ruffalo performance. And one of the things that is a hallmark of Ruffalo's 25-year career is that you could say that about all of his best performances, because he's such an unshowy actor. The spotlight speech aside, like he just sinks into things, and he just embodies a kind of conflicted morality, but always erring towards good, that I think is really, really compelling. And so his performance, the pairing of the two we've talked about, is so brilliant, that he's just such a steady, speaking of bass, like a steady bass drum underneath the more frantic snare of like what Robbie's doing with Cliff. And to have it emerge into this solo and realize that this has been about I mean, everyone's the main character of their own story, but he becomes the main character and his story becomes the main story of the show of redemption. And I think that Ruffalo is astonishing in this episode. Like he has big action moments and clobbering the shit out of Perry. And it's like, whoa, I didn't know Tom had that in his bag. But what he then goes through in the aftermath, and you see the priest emerge again in terms of like giving Robbie last rites. And then there is a moment, and I feel like you lost Alison Oliver's performance. And so you went through your grieving process.
I did.
And you were emotional, maybe uncharacteristically so. It could be the jet lag. I miss my kids. But when Tom comes home with Sam, and again, like we were joking over text last night when we both watched the episode, and you were like, well, the inevitable happened in a compelling way. And I was like, oh, it's Tom adopting Sam, which felt inevitable from the beginning. I don't have receipts. I didn't say it on the podcast. It just felt like something that we were headed towards. But he shows up and he's got a Batman Lego and he goes in the kitchen to make peanut butter and jelly, and his daughters, who are now united in a really beautiful way. And again, this is a subtle thing. Clearly, Brad has multiple children, because a sign of a healthy home is the children conspiring against the adult,
right?
And not being on the adult side anymore, being like on each other's side, which is sort of beautiful and subtle and definitely recognizable, I would say, as a hashtag girl dad. But he's making peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and they're saying like, why are you doing this? Why did you do this? Are you sure this is a good idea? And I'm sure the audience is saying that as well. And he basically says, I saw him in this place, this awful, hopeless place. And I thought about your mother, and I thought, what would she do? And the best answer I could come up with was to bring him home. That is anyone else.
Like, doesn't he say something like, there's no way she would let him be there? Like she would never let this kid stay in this place. Yeah.
And now, does anyone else want a peanut butter and jelly sandwich? And it got super dusty in this London executive apartment.
It's just like, and the totality, the totality of the experience of watching Tom basically get this second lease on life from Robbie, because Robbie is, they do this car ride. They talk about Team Susan or Team Tom and what happens after you die, and birds, and Tom thinks he's going to be killed. He's going to be executed out in the woods by Robbie. And he's just like, just let me talk to my kids. Let me talk to my kids. And Robbie's like, I'm going to actually send you somewhere beautiful, Yeah. And he lets him go and he makes him walk through the woods. And that his emergence from those woods seems to revive not only his ability to be a law enforcement officer or an agent, but also a father, and also a communicator, and somebody who's like opening up his heart. And maybe that's also what happens after Robbie dies in his arms. You know what I mean? Like he's given this gift that allows him to return to who he was. I mean, think about like, he's now got 2 kids in his house. He has now got another third child that he is essentially fostering. Yeah. He's pursuing this case outside of like what is just the bare minimum of what is required from him in his job. He's like, no, I'm going to go to Kathleen's house. I'm going to keep looking after this. And then he goes after Grasso in what was I thought a wonderful scene. Like, yes, it is the 3rd time Grasso has pointedly asked about the Catholic Church, but I actually thought it was pretty cool that Grasso wasn't like, I didn't do anything. Like,
no, I love that.
That he was like, is that a rhetorical question, or are you really asking me? And it's like, what can you prove versus what do you know is the whole thing.
Before we get there, just to say, like, this entire series is above my religious pay grade. Like, there is something that strikes me as profoundly Catholic about all of it, in ways that I don't.
I'll let you know when I get to the chapter that explains task.
I was going to ask if you could talk me through it, and maybe, if we get a chance to talk to Brad again, we can talk specifically about this stuff, because the idea of life and death as connected as a circle is stitched into every is stitched into the very fabric of the show. Tom lost his wife and essentially lost his son in the process. Robbie kills Sam's parents and takes Sam, and all of this awful, awful, deeply felt death leads to Sam snuggling up and falling asleep safe for the first time in maybe many years in his life in Tom's house. Mm-hmm. And that's what I think anyone who's ever lived or gone through any kind of grieving process clings to and comes out the other side of. It's like, we have life still. We have more life, and we have to make the most of it. when we have it. And I found that, again, I found it very affecting. I find it very moving, and I feel lucky about the show because it gave me the action highs and it gave me this I think punch of emotion.
I think sometimes like Catholic imagery and religious imagery and crime stuff can be a sign of heavy-handedness.
Yeah. It has been both in the work of Dennis Lehane.
I think at one point in the 5th episode, when Shelley and Robbie meet in the beginning of the episode, and Robbie's like, "Why should I trust you?" And Shelley is like, "Here, I have this plan. We're going to sell the drugs on our own." He's like, "Why should I trust you?" And she's like, "Because I'm a good person." And he goes, "Jesus Christ!" And I'm a good person, or am I a good person, or are we bad people? Is like a very, very, very overworked trope in crime television and in prestige television over the years. But I don't know. This show just kind of earns those kinds of discussions, and I think that when Grasso is asking about confession and talking about like the nature of like, unburdening himself, and Tom just says like confessions for human beings, like
confessions are for humans, a human practice to help us with our shame. It's not for God's sake. If you want to be forgiven, all you have to do is ask.
Yes.
About
and
that
then
scene,
like a vengeful God, Tom's like, if you're not going to come clean with me, I'm coming for you.
Pretty ballsy to show up at the new bad guy's house alone, especially now that you've taken on the charge of a traumatized 8-year-old boy.
Yeah.
But you got to still got to be a TV show. I respect it. One thing I want to say, I want to make sure that this is on the record, that I will no longer be slandering Sir Kristen Cole.
She's got it.
It is an incredible thing when you realize that your only experience with an actor is seeing them essentially in a corset, or like in his case, like a very tightly fitting armor. I'm not saying he's bad on that show. I'm saying, what is he doing? And it's certainly not. We've been talking a bunch over the last few weeks about shows or directors that understand the actors that they cast and how to showcase them and unlock them and unleash them, like Ethan Hawke in The Lowdown or whatever, or Tom Pelphrey here, or actually most of this, Amelia Jones, who might be the MVP of the entire series. We haven't even mentioned her much today. He's so good. He is just purely good in the show. Fabien Frankel, like English actor who is just understanding the assignment. And I feel like maybe we'll ask him about this, but like, I just, without naming names, I bet they auditioned a lot of people who thought they were auditioning for Delco Heat, and were playing not to the cheap seats, but playing to the popular seats. And this guy is so haunted. He's just deeply haunted throughout. And the turn from calling him boss and seeming to be really like the supplicant, like going to him for confession, to the devil, is so elegantly done.
Did you like the scene between Grasso and his county detective boss, who's also obviously in cahoots with the Dark Arts, and them talking about, and like Grasso just being like, "She died in my arms," and like
he's like, "Forget her."
Yeah,
it was a good scene. Lot of Yinglings, morning, noon, and night, which I don't necessarily disrespect. One thing I'm learning, when you get like TV brain, when you see shows too close to each other, and like after I watched this and then I watched the first House of Guinness, and I was like, boy, men do not like to have liquid poured on them. Like that is just like a real violation to get your head in the sink or have a drink thrown in your face. I like that scene, but like, I guess the other thing to say about the surprise, like finding out where we are in the show, like all these things happened and then it pivots into kind of a different type of story for the last episode. The proof that it works, and it's a leap of faith, shout out the Catholic Church. It's a leap of faith that they would get to episode 6 and take the 1A on the call sheet off the board and essentially solve many aspects of the task force's case. And I don't feel diminished. Like I'm not thinking that it's going to be like in the grand tradition of The Wire, where the last episode's like a long denouement. Like that is not the case. We are dealing with something deeper from a different perspective than we had previously realized. Yeah,
and I haven't watched, obviously we have not watched the finale, but given what we know now about what this show is really about and given what even Tom and Grosso talk about in Grosso's house, you have to assume that Ethan's court hearing is coming up. And that is going to be about like physician heal thyself. Like you can't just go around telling people, you know, what happens when you die and how forgiveness works without reckoning with it with your own family. And that might be what this fucking show is about. Like the Perry and Jason and Grosso stuff could get wrapped up in 5 minutes. It's really going to be about like, is this guy's soul capable of being revived?
I can't be the only one who thought that when there's the shot of Tom walking into not Covenant House, but essentially the juvie where Sam's being held, that I thought he was going into the prison. But that's not a this episode thing. You're right about Perry and Jason. Like all Jason has to do is figure out what happened with Aaron, and then that's a wrap on Uncle Pear.
Do you think we're going to get much of an explanation as to like how Grosso comes to be a Departed style like
I do
detective?
Because I think there's a lot more there, and that like that character is going to reveal himself, and like I said, he's the villain now in a show that doesn't really do villains other than, I mean, Perry and Jason are villains, but they still love their ladies, you know.
Anything else from this episode? I mean, I have a bunch of stuff that I thought was just really lovely, like, or well done. I mean, obviously Lizzie's death, her whole like sequence of events in the woods, getting basically like terrified and then killing Shane when Shane obviously thinks that Grosso is going to stop her from pulling the trigger. That quick moment where Shane is just like, I'm going to kill her, I'm going to get her, and Grosso's like, if you touch her, you're fucking dead, you know? His efforts to protect her while also trying to do whatever he's trying to do out there. I mean, I don't think he wanted the bikers there in the first place because he had told Jason, he's got an agent with him, don't come out here. And look, man, I mean, like, that's a fucking brutal death scene for Lizzie. I will note with it, you know, getting hit full speed by a pickup truck, I don't think you'd look as lovely and peaceful afterwards as was Grosso holding her in.
I respect the fiction.
Yes.
I was grateful for the fiction. Alison Oliver, get your flowers.
Yeah.
An incredible 110% commitment performance. I watched Conversation with Friends, and you could have given me 10 guesses about what I would see her do next, and none of them would have been this.
Yeah.
And I like that show fine.
And that was just great when Aaliyah finds the bullseye patch, you know?
Heartbreak. Beautiful. I love the Maeve confession scene. I think Emilia Jones is just God tier. And I love the writing, and I love just enough. You know, like I find myself in two-handed scenes like that. I was like, is she just going to say that's the same guy who killed my dad? Now he's taken everyone away, but she did it in a look, you know? And so when you have a chance, when actors take dialogue off the board, not saying that line was written, but it could have been, and it wasn't necessary. I love that.
I also loved Maeve's release, like when she gets home.
I did too. That reminded me of Mare in the sense that, like, I think some people who were watching that show also as like a crime show or a procedural were like, oh, it's a little bit fantasy at the end. Like, it's a little bit rewarding, but I'm like, these people deserve a reward. Like, I think that Brad is essentially optimistic about life, even though the shows are quite dark. I'd also say
funny
that, like,
you should say that, though. I did read a little bit of ambiguity in the reaction where she was like, now I'm the mother of two small children. You know, like,
it's not exactly. It's hugging you and it's hitting you. I mean, it's better for the world. Tom is factually right when he says that, but it's not like her life gets that much easier even then when the drug cast shows up. I liked how strongly Tom kept saying "Wissahickon."
Yeah,
that's a word, you know, we used to hear a lot in our life, and 20, 30 years go by.
We just have to wait for an HBO series to say it a lot. That was pretty much all I had for this one. As far as like unanswered questions, like we've kind of gone over them. Perry and Jason are still out there. The Aaron mystery, to the extent that there is one, we're just waiting for Jason to put 2 and 2 together. And then it's Grosso and his boss, and whether or not the boss will get implicated. And just, where's Freddie? Because we've spent some time with Freddie. And look, I think that there is some chatter out there about this not being a limited series. So
there was chatter about Mare too, and Mare remained a limited series.
Season 3, we bring the two the two houses of Philadelphia together.
Jesus Christ! Don't
Mayor
tempt
Task.
me with a good time.
Mayor of Tasktown.
Mayor of
But
Tasktown.
I wonder whether or not they would let anything be the. Is Grosso in the wind? Is
there going to
Jason
be
still
anything
on-
dangling? Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
I don't think so either, but it
We're
does.
going to find out.
I thought the thing that jumped out at me most was McGinty saying, "I'm not going to put you up for my job," but maybe she will.
Yeah. Well, let's find out what her intentions are.
Great to talk to you, man. We'll be back on Thursday with some more WatchPod stuff. Everybody enjoy Task. I hope you're enjoying Task.
Yeah, that would be a weird way to.
Yeah, and I can't wait to talk about the finale with you.